reading the Bible for all it's worth. And the idea behind this is to give you some tips and tools of how to get more out of reading the Bible. I'm going to tell you a story which I don't think I've told here before, but I might have. It's really hard. I've been coming up to my 3rd anniversary of being here at the church, and I'm now hitting that stage where you're going, have I told this before or not? Have I told this before or not? When John and I were at Theological College, because we did a lot of Theological College together, I remember this time I was talking to one of my biblical lecturers, and he gave me an analogy that was about a blue pitcher. Have I ever told you about this analogy before? Here is the blue pitcher. In my mind, I have it that I actually saw the blue pitcher. I'm not 100% sure if we actually had that experience or not, John, but in my mind I seem to remember actually looking at the blue pitcher. But this idea was there was a blue pitcher, and the theological lecturer in Bible studies said, tell me about this picture. And we said, it's blue. He said, very good. It's good. He said, come a bit closer. And when you came a bit closer, you actually saw that the picture was more than blue. It actually had a whole bunch of different shades of blue, and there was bright strokes in it that you could actually see, patterns and stuff with the brush strokes. And actually, the closer you got to see there was actually other colours in there besides blue. There was little red dots and stuff like that. And I remember the analogy going something like this. The lecturer said, often when we read the Bible, there is this obvious message that comes through. Like the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's about caring for all people, isn't it? There's an obvious message that comes through. But the point that my Bible lecturer was trying to make is that sometimes when we look closely at a Bible passage, come a bit closer, take a bit of a deeper look at it, we can see other things in there. We can see other insights or revelations within a Bible passage. Now, does that mean that the original revelation, that the picture is blue, is wrong? No, that is still correct. The picture is still blue. But we're just saying that there is sometimes more to a Bible passage than just the immediate answer that pops out or the immediate insight that pops out. Is that making sense? Because that's what I want to try and explore. I'm doing this week and next week. Sam's doing the week after. So for this week and next week, I'm hoping just to explore this idea that we're going to look a little bit deeper. How do you do that? How do you look a little bit deeper into the things that a Bible might have? I've stopped going in my things. I just catch myself up. Because that's what they taught us to do at Theological College. They taught us how to explore deeply into a Bible passage. And they gave us a whole bunch of things like we learnt about exegesis and eisegesis and character perspectives and contextual, historical, canonical, literary criticisms. We learnt about Greek and Hebrew. We learned about all this sort of stuff. And I remember another time one of the lecturers challenging us and sort of going, we teach you how to get the most out of the Bible. When you go out in your congregations, are you going to teach them how to do the same things? Because this is not just for us. This is for all people to get the most out of the Bible. So I try and do that. Every 2 or 3 years, I will do another session on reminding you of some of these tips and those tools to help us get the most out of the Bible. All right, I've got your phone up here, AJ. Do you want that? Because I'm going to ask you to type some comments soon. It's just allergies. AJ says she's just got allergies. All right. To start off, I want to go to the Uniting Church Basis of Union. In the central document that the Uniting Church has, when it was first formed, and this is trying to explain who we are, it says this about the Bible, that the Uniting Church acknowledges that the Bible, the church has received the books of the Old and New Testament as unique prophecy and apostolic testimony in which we hear the word of God and by which our faith and obedience are nourished and regulated. It's actually saying, in this book that I have here, the Bible, no water in that, there is actually, we hear God speak to us through this. It goes on to say in the exact same paragraph that the Uniting Church lays upon its members the serious duty of reading the Scriptures and commits its ministers to preach from these. So the United Church is saying this is so important that God speaks through this book, and we call upon all its members, all the people connected to the United Church, the serious duty of reading the Scriptures. Can you see how highly the United Church is putting upon this book? And yet, if we're honest, many of us would say we struggle to find time to read the Bible. I'm not going to ask you when the last time you read the Bible was, because that's a guilt-inducing question, and I don't want people to feel guilty about that. But we do lead very busy lives, and sometimes in the busyness, actually finding time to read the Bible is lesser down the priority than some of the other things that we do. And so my goal for the next couple of weeks, I don't know if this is Sam's goal as well, is that I'm going to try and encourage all of us to read the Bible a little bit more. I'm going to try and give you some tips and some tools to get more out of when you read the Bible, to find some greater insight or read a bit more deeply. And I'm going to show you some resources that might be helpful when reading the Bible. Sound good? I'm going to jump into this. In our Bible reading for today, it's almost like Jesus is doing an introduction to Bible 101 in this Bible reading. So much so that if you went to any introductory Bible course, they would possibly use this passage as the opening passage to talk about the Bible. Why? Because Jesus within it teaches us how to get the most out of the Bible. This expert of the law comes up and says, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Now, back then, an expert in the law was the biblical law. So basically, we're talking about an expert in the Bible comes up to Jesus and asks a question which he would have already known the answer for, which is why we say that he was there to test Jesus, as John prayed about before. He already knows the answer, so then why is he asking the question? He's trying to trick Jesus somehow. Now, if Jesus had an opportunity here to give a good, concise answer to the question, well, what must we do to inherit eternal life? So you think that Jesus would have jumped in and given, the 2 ways to live, or something else that was very succinct, very clear answer to that question. But Jesus doesn't do that. What does Jesus do instead? He asks 2 questions back. What a wasted opportunity. Jesus could have, not only for the people listening, but for everyone reading the Bible from then on, have this clear answer. But instead he asks 2 questions. What is written in the law, and how do you read it? Please understand, they are 2 different questions. They are 2 different questions that Jesus is asking here. The first one is this idea of, well, what is written? Give me a quote. Tell me what the law says. Tell me the understandings of the person writing that law. What is the context that it was written in? Tell me about the text itself. What is written there? Now, there's a word for that, a fancy word called exegesis. Have you heard that word before? Excellent. Because exegesis is the study of the text itself. What does it mean? What is the context? What is the cultural understandings? How do we understand that text itself? But the second part of it is Jesus went on to say, but how do you read it, or how do you understand it? Because that is a separate question. It's rather than saying, what does the text say? It's actually going, well, in your own understanding, in your own life, how do you apply it to your own life? You come to the text with biases and understandings and experiences, and some of those get tied up with how we read the Bible as well. And so Jesus is saying, what is our understanding of what those words mean? How does this reading speak into our own situation? And there's a word for that called eisegesis. And Jesus is saying, if you want to get the most out of the Bible, you need to do both of these. Look at the text itself and try and understand the context of what the original writer was trying to say. But also you need to apply it to your own situation, your own life, and work out what does these words mean in your own life. And so Jesus says to him, what is written in the law, and how do you understand it? How do you read it? The expert in the law answers the question, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind and all your strength, and love your neighbour as yourself. What did he do? Eisegesis or exegesis? It's clearly exegesis. Why? Because he actually quotes 2 Bible verses in doing so. Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 5 and Leviticus 19 verse 8. He literally quotes the Bible back to Jesus. Mind you, he had to do a little bit of work there because he had to work out which verses to quote back to Jesus, but he quotes the text itself. And Jesus actually responds, even though he only does exegesis. Jesus himself said, well, yes, that is correct. You got it right. Well done. That is the correct answer. Then what does Jesus say after that? Do it and you will live. Do it and you will get eternal life. So Jesus is actually saying, yeah, that is the correct exegetical answer. But you have to work out how you do that in your own life. You're missing the eisegesis part of that. You need to work out how do you take this text and apply it to your life. And when you do that, it will all make sense. And then you will find life. You will find the everlasting life that you are searching for. Can you see how Jesus is saying, whenever we read the Bible, we have to do both exegesis and eisegesis? What does the text say? How do we apply it to our own life? Keeping up with this? Good, because I'm going to see how we do this in relation to the actual Bible reading for tonight. So the Good Samaritan that Jesus went on to talk about, let's see if we can do some exegesis and eisegesis and see if we can learn how we can do this in our own life. So let's go with the exegesis part of the Good Samaritan. What is the cultural context of it? What is the writer's intention or Jesus' intention when he was doing this? Well, what is the context of the Good Samaritan? Well, I could give you some context. Do you know that the road from Jerusalem to Jericho is actually quite a dangerous road and that many people did actually get mugged on it? Jesus wasn't making this up. This was actually fact at that time. And at that time that the Jewish people, i.e. Jesus and the people he was speaking to, and the Samaritans did not get on. It's an old dispute. I can tell you about it later if you want me to. It's an old dispute about intermarriages and how we worship God. And the idea is that even though they're very similar in their religion and very similar, they're almost like cousins. They're family, but they hate each other. And they did not want anything to do with each other, which is why it was so shocking that the Samaritan helped the Jewish person. Also, we're very hard on the priest and the Levite, but they were actually following the law, because the law says do not help Samaritans, do not talk to Samaritans, which is why, if you remember this, Jesus speaking to the Samaritan woman, so shocking, because he wasn't actually supposed to be doing that in the first place. And even for the priest, if he touched a dead body, he would have been technically unclean for the next week, which meant that he wouldn't have been able to do his job in the temple. And so he might have gone, I need to walk on the other side of the road because that will take away the ability for me to do God's work if I touch a dead body. And so there's some complexities that come into this for them to be walking on the other side of the road as well. Now you might be thinking, context in, I'm a minister, I know all this stuff, I can just pull it out of my head. How would you do the context of a passage that you are reading? Well, that is a good question. How do we find out the context of a passage that you're reading, the cultural understandings that go with the passage? Because let me tell you, I can't do this out of my head. I have to do it the same as you as well. I need to find out some of these answers. When John and I were back at college, we got taught how to do this. We got taught a whole bunch of criticisms, not in the sense of being critical and whinging, but being critically analysing a passage. And so we got taught things like contextual criticisms, literary criticisms, source and form and historical criticisms. We also learnt original languages about Greek and Hebrew, but I'm going to talk slightly more about that next week. And if we wanted to actually get a good understanding of the context of a passage that we were reading, we would have to go to the library and we would use books like commentaries. I've got an old commentary here. And we would look up commentaries and other books and read about it and get an understanding of the context of the passage that we were trying to study. And so it would take us about an hour to look up all this information about one Bible passage. Now, we're in 2020 now, and let me tell you, there is a very easy way of doing this. Do you know what it is? Google. Seriously, you don't know how good of an era you guys are living in when it comes to this. Because you can find out the context of a passage in less than 60 seconds by using your smart device. All you need to do is to work out the right question to ask. And so, like when I was doing this for today, all I did was that I typed in, well, what is the cultural understanding of the Good Samaritan? Or the context of the Good Samaritan? And it pops up all these answers. You can see them on the screen. You know, I've got, I can't actually read that. I don't have my glasses on the right way. The historical context of the Good Samaritan by some university. Oh, there it is, St. Louis University. Sacred and the Strange. Another person's giving some context. The Parable of the Good Samaritan by Wikipedia. I just flicked through these, didn't even read them. I just skimmed them. And suddenly I'm getting all this context about the passage. In less than 3 minutes, you can get a good overall understanding of the cultural understanding or the context or other things you might need to know about understanding the passage you are reading. Here are some of as I said, it's all about coming down to knowing the right questions to ask Google. So something like context or cultural context or exegesis of. You can even type in the Bible reference and it works in Google. So you could say, what did Jesus mean in Luke chapter 10, verse 25 to 37, and an answer will pop up. And so, if you're trying to go, well, I don't understand, why are they talking about this? Or, if you wanted to not just look at the blue picture, but to draw it a bit closer and get a little bit more out of it, simply 3 minutes on a smart device will give you some good context to understanding a little bit more about that passage. And I would argue that it is worth doing that. Also, I don't know what sort of Bible you've got, but this is my Bible up here. And I've got a Bible that's called a study Bible that's got the text up the top, but little cheat notes down the bottom. Do you have a Bible like that? If you don't and you want one, talk to me. Because they are worth it. They are really worth it. Because, when I read the Bible here and I don't understand a verse, I can just look down the bottom here and often it will actually tell me what it means. So this does that work for you as well. You've got all these really good resources and tools to help you get the context of a particular passage. So if you want to read the Bible for all it's worth, it's probably worth investing a few minutes when you're reading a passage to Google the context of the passage you are reading. You can do that with exegesis because exegesis is quite subjective. No, is that right? Objective. It's quite objective. The answers that you get from Google, they're pretty close to what it is. You can't trust everything on the internet. But if you find the same answer coming up in 2 or 3 of the different Google results, you can be pretty sure that is the right context of the passage. So with exegesis, it's good to use Google. But we're also learning about eisegesis. How do we apply it to our lives? And you can't do that with Google because eisegesis is quite subjective. What does it mean to you? And you can't just go, well, what does this passage mean to me? Because you'll get somebody else's answer. It's not as good eisegesis. We have to do the hard work ourselves for that one. So how do we do eisegesis then? If we can't Google the answer, how do we do it? I'm going to talk a little bit more about this next week. There's some really great tools around, but I want to teach you one today, and that's character identification. So here in the story, if you look at all the different characters, which we can do in this story, because there are characters, who in the story is closest to your current life situation? So think about where you are right now in your life. Is it the man that was beaten up, the priest of the Levite, the Good Samaritan, the innkeeper, the robbers, the donkey? Who do you most associate with in that story? I don't know if you are watching this online and want to write your answer in. You can. We like to do some interaction here in the building. If you wanted to yell out, I identify with this one, you can. But I got to put in a disclaimer that one of my lecturers said that we have a bad habit, a bias towards always choosing the hero of the story. Who do I identify with? Of course it's the Good Samaritan. Of course I'm going to be the one who does the right thing. And my lecturer would say, no, push beyond that bias. Think a little bit more about this. Who is the person we identify with? And when I was doing this, when I was typing my sermon, I was thinking, well, if the priest walked by because the job that they were doing seemed more important than stopping and helping somebody, or that they were just too busy to stop and they didn't notice, then maybe I, even though I don't want to, identify with the priest. And then as soon as I'm starting to think that way, I go, but I don't want to be the priest. I don't want to be the priest. What do I need to change in my life so I'm not the priest? And then I suddenly went, wow, this is what we talk about when we talk about the Bible being a living document, isn't it? Something that can speak to us, because it's already convicting me. If I think that I'm the priest and I don't want to be the priest, then I want to change my life so I'm not the priest, then the Bible is life-changing for me. See how it works? When we start to enter into a passage, it does have that ability to confront and change us, and that's a good thing. Or another way that we can do this character identification is to try and imagine ourselves as a character in the story. And so if you put yourself in the place of somebody and then view the story from their perspective. So for example, imagine you are the person who is beaten up. Who are the people in your life who are the people who are just walking by? And who are the people in your life who are stopping to help? How do we apply that to our own lives? Or where is the place of healing and, restoration where you need to go to find that healing and recuperating? Where is those places for you? Or maybe if we put ourselves into the story in the Good Samaritan role, who is our donkey? Who are the people who are around you, who are helping you when you're helping others? Or it physically costs the Good Samaritan to help. At least 2 denarii in the Bible reading, but then maybe cost it even more. So who are the people, what is the cost of you helping somebody else? Can you see how I'm doing this? So I guess my encouragement for you is not just, here's another one. When the expert in the law said, well, the answer is to love God and love others. And Jesus says, yes, you are correct. If Jesus is saying that is the correct answer, then maybe we need to apply that answer to our lives. It could be some good homework to have 2 columns on a sheet of paper and actually start to think, what am I doing at the moment which is loving God? What am I doing at the moment which is showing love to others? Do I need to address anything which either is or is not on that list? I guess what I'm encouraging you to do is that if you want to read the Bible for all it's worth, when you choose a passage to read, don't just read it and go, all right, well, I know what that's about. It's about helping others. Spend just 10 minutes more with the passage. 10 minutes more. Spend a few moments Googling the context, see what the Google feeds back to you and gives you insight. And then spend a few more moments reflecting on how do I apply that passage to my own life, and you will get more out of it. God will speak to you out of that passage. Sort of get the idea? One last thing I want to mention just before I wrap this up. A number of months ago, I mentioned Tuck 121. Do you remember when I did that? It was part of the discipleship series we did. It was about 3 months ago. And I offered this idea of pairing people up to read the Bible together. And this idea of only just spending 10 minutes a week together, whether that's on the phone or on Zoom or face-to-face, and in that 10 minutes together to read a small passage together out loud, and then to ask 2 questions. Did anyone actually do this? I did it with a pair. Did anyone else from our church? Dave did. And there was a number of people who did it. There was about 30 or 40 people right across the life of the church. Some people are still going on it because they find it so helpful. Yeah, they're still going. So I want to... The 2 questions I asked people to do with the passage, if you remember, Dave, was what jumps out of the passage? You know, is there anything in the passage that really just stands out? And what's one idea that you can apply to your life? Can you see what I've done there? I've used Jesus' questions out of our Bible reading to form the questions of the 1-2-1 that we did 3 months ago. It's exactly the same. What does the passage say? What jumps out of the passage? What does the text say? And how do we apply that to our lives? It doesn't have to take long. And actually, I'm going to suggest that there's still an opportunity to rejig 1-to-1. If you missed out on it last time and would like to do it this time, there are people who still want to be paired up. And so all you got to do is send me an email or a message or say, just pair me up and I'll give you a pair. And say, all right, for the next 4 to 6 weeks, find 10 minutes to talk to each other. Read a Bible out loud, ask these 2 questions. It's amazing how good it is. I've been doing it with Peter Rogers for the last, ever since it's about 2.5 months now. And we just 10 minutes it takes once a week. We have a phone call. And it's really, really great. And so I can link you up intergenerationally if you want, or link you up with another young person. But yes, take this opportunity to go, you know what, I do actually want to get more out of reading the Bible. Well, here's an opportunity for you to engage with the Bible with somebody 10 minutes a week. That will actually make a difference. If you want to know what it's about, go to that website, turramurrauniting.org.au/tuck121. For those people who have been doing it, Dave, I've actually got more Bible passages on there for you to read. I've put another 4 blocks on there. So there's 8 blocks now. So you can, if you want to know what to read in the Bible, you can go to that one and read some of that as well. Gee, I feel like I've spoken a lot. Let me wrap this up. If you want to read the Bible for all it's worth, find a few passages in the Bible to read. If you don't know what to read, go to that 1-to-1 page. Google the context. See what Google feeds back to you. See what insights or revelations that bring. What is the writer, what is Jesus trying to say? And then reflect on how to apply that to your own life.